Hey, Fearless Church. Just a reminder to tune in with us on Sunday at 11 a.m. on our page on Facebook Live to worship together as a body of believers. We are praying for the day that we'll all be able to meet together in person, but we know that God is still moving and doing incredible things in and through us during this time. If there's something He has done that you'd like to share, please write it down. Tag us on Facebook or Instagram. Right now, we're busy creating devotions and other fun activities to send your way via social media. So if you're interested, be sure to follow us, and we cannot wait to see you soon. In today's podcast, we had some friends come over to just talk through how they're processing this global pandemic and how we as Jesus followers can respond both in our homes and in our communities. Even if we're quarantined, what can we be doing to really allow the Holy Spirit to work in and through us? We hope this brings you comfort and reminds you that we're not alone in these crazy times.
First off, thanks so much for joining us tonight, for coming over to just process what's going on in your lives. Let's start off by introducing ourselves and just talking a little bit about how you've been affected by the last few weeks.
Yeah, hi, I'm Matt Dearden. I'm a longtime Dayton resident and 3 young kids, 5 and under, happily married. But yeah, I'm generally a really positive guy. And so with each of these progressive waves of news coming down over the past several weeks, I think with each one, I tried to twist it into something really positive. But after a couple weeks, you're like, wow, this is really getting tough to twist into something positive after a while. And so it's like body blows, right? And so as these things have come through, and increasingly I'm thinking, how's this going to affect my family? How's this going to affect my kids, my job? And just trying to process through all that gets pretty overwhelming after a while.
This is Brian. I have 2 grown kids, a senior in high school and a college junior. My wife and I both work full time, and it's been strange because I feel like we've been affected the least. Both of our jobs are secure, not affected by the changes. Our kids are self-sufficient. Our son actually lives away at college on his own. And even for him, he wasn't on campus in the dorm, so he's sort of independent off campus on his own, is working less hours, but still studying. And our youngest, spring break, so he's just home being lazy as normal. And he's probably the least to have been affected. A 17-year-old suburban kid has had really no changes to his life so far, where his mother and I are carrying the burden of stress and anxiety about what this could mean to our household. But we've just been really aware of coworkers, and my wife's a manager, of the people that report up to her, how this is affecting their life, and taking a role of how to care for them and be empathetic to them and accommodate other people, because we're in this privileged position where we don't need to be accommodated or make adjustments. So there's been a lot of guilt with that also, because we've not been affected.
Well, yeah.
I'm Allie. I work in a school system, so I've sort of been affected in that way, in that the schools are closed. However, I still have to go into work, so it's a little bit of an annoyance. But honestly, I'm actually really thankful to still have some routine and structure, because I thrive in that. I don't like a lot of unstructured time. But so I've seen a lot of just the care and concern that comes for families when kids are not in school, and kids that a lot of them really rely on the structure and routine of school and things like meals and just having a space that is safe to be. A lot of these kids are like in homes where they might not feel very safe. So that's kind of difficult to think about. But other than that, I feel like I'm a little bit in the same boat as Brian, in that like at this point I don't have fear that my job will be in jeopardy or I won't be paid. And even kind of beyond that, like I'm not married, I don't have kids. And so any concerns that I have would be just for myself. It's not like I have to think about keeping a family afloat or anything like that. So it's kind of one of those times when this stage of life is a blessing.
I'm Grace, and I'm a mom of 2 really young kids. My oldest is 5, and he's in preschool, and then my youngest is 2. But we're coming out of a time where they are in daycare, not full-time. Eli goes to preschool, and Bella still goes to daycare so that I can work part-time. And even though I've been a stay-at-home mom for a while, I think being thrown back into being with them literally 100% of the day has been a huge change for me. Just trying to like even maintain my patience and want to like have that time be valuable, but also like keep myself sane and get my work done that I need to do for my part-time job. So I'm still trying to find that balance, and I think that that's been a really big part of my last week. And then even just like the anxiety, like let's keep their hands clean, let's make sure that we're staying away from germs, and just I feel like it's what any mom of young kids experiences, but on a really, really high, like exaggerated level of just wanting to stay clean and trying not to worry too much about the spread.
Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm one of the pastors at Fearless Church, and I think for me it's been a very weird thing since most of my entire job is centered around a large group gathering that occurs once a week, which has been effectively shut down for who knows how long. I think it's just caused a lot of like, oh man, I have to rethink everything that we do all at once. And so it's been interesting just processing through, well, my goal and our goal as a church is to help people. And how do we do that when like people don't even really know how they need to be helped yet because things are just shifting so fast. It's crazy how different day-to-day life is literally day to day.
I think that is perhaps the hardest part. We at home have talked about comparing it to like the windstorm 7, 8, 10 years ago, how long it was. We were out of electricity for 8 days. But you knew that the end was coming soon, and you still had this community that was able to come together. Just the lights were out, and the refrigerator was banished. This just feels different. The isolation and the uncertainty of the time period for us to wrap our minds around 8 weeks or 10 weeks takes it beyond the realm of any Midwestern history of a storm or a blizzard or even the power out. Mm-hmm. And so that uncertainty has changed the processing of it all and added that it's a new element that's really caused us to really pause and think about our actions and maybe even make decisions that we may not have done otherwise. Like we made an extra trip to the grocery store, which we normally would not do. Like we're the calm people with a stocked pantry, but they were like, you know what? But what if this gets worse? Should we have more of these 7 staples? And so I found myself between Kroger and Walmart at 10 o'clock at night, you know, which would. So the uncertainty is really a little unsettling.
I mean, I found myself looking for grits. I mean, when have I ever looked for grits in my life?
Why were you looking for grits?
Shelf stable, though.
Yeah. No, and the very thing that typically we do to process something like this would be to like call up a friend and say, hey, do you want to grab coffee tonight? But that very thing we cannot do. I mean, where are you going to grab coffee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And so I think that the very avenue that we typically use in these situations to get out from under it and get out of our own head and all of that stuff is closed. And so that's what makes it so isolating.
Yeah, so let me ask this question. In the midst of this uncertainty and all that, how are the people that you all are interacting with on a day-to-day basis, how are they processing through these things? Do you see, like you, obviously on the news, on the media, you hear all sorts of different reactions and people saying like, this was a hoax, what people thought like a week ago, or like, this is ridiculous and overblown. Other people are very fearful and buying up thousands of rolls of toilet paper. All, you know, like there's these 2 different responses that you see on the media, but like real people in your real everyday life that you're interacting with, like how are they responding to it?
I think most of the people that I've talked to about it, like at work or in my neighborhood, are all kind of in the same place that I feel like I'm in, which is kind of like what you said, just not really knowing how to process it because we don't have anything to compare it to. We don't have a reference point. And so I think the people that I've talked to don't really think it's being blown out of proportion, realize that it is a big thing. And I think we're still all just kind of, I don't want to say in shock, but it's like a slow shock. Like I feel like you hear news and then it takes a couple days to catch up and think like, okay, what's the impact of this? Like maybe initially you hear something and you kind of like freak out and get anxious about it. Like that's kind of when I heard about the restaurants closing, not like because I love restaurants, although I do, but like just thinking about like all the small businesses that like make Dayton what it is and make it like a place I love to live, and thinking of all the like people that work there that are going to be affected by that. Like my first thought was like fear and anxiety, but then, okay, like we figured it out. People are going to do carry out. People are like the places that I've gone have had business, like they're selling out of things that they're trying to sell. And so I think people are coming around and supporting them. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it's just trying to learn how to process something that we've never had to process before.
I feel that there's a little bit of a sense of just resignation to what's going to come, and not knowing how to process, but also just almost like a slow depression that's setting in. And I think as humans, not all of us, but I think most of us want to be able to do something, even if it's not to serve others, it's to do something to help ourselves out of the problem, which we really can't do. There's very little that we can do to attack this virus. Or you could say virtually nothing. Our white blood cells can do some damage, but that's assuming we even have it, And so I think that there's very little we can do, and so that puts us at such a loss because we don't have any concrete steps to take, at least in our minds.
Isn't that the hardest thing, though? Like I think as maybe human, but definitely as an American, that this is beyond our control, and we do a really good job of displacing faith or God in our lives for things we can't control, like our job or savings account or investments. But in this time, we literally have no control, and our government's doing the best they can. But like you said, there's nothing we can do about this virus. And so that uncertainty, compounded by the absolute loss of control, outside of hoarding toilet paper and sanitizer, which has no effect on the virus at all. It's just a soothing mechanism, right? Like to hoard that it does nothing for you, but that's sort of where we've come as a culture. Like the only way we can gain control is to hoard canned goods and toilet paper as some sort of way to externalize some sort of resistance that we're leading on our own. And I think that's the part that really has the possibility to change people's outlook and the what they value and what they hold close, and I think will cause people to look deep and understanding that this world really is bigger than us and we don't have control that we've thought we've had for such a long time.
Yeah. I was just thinking as you were saying that, like, I am somebody that really thrives in feeling like I'm in control of my situation and wherever I am, whether it's, even just my daily routine. Like I have a planner and I stick to it, and I have things in pen and I'm looking like 3 weeks ahead all the time. There is this little part of it, I understand it a little bit, this need that people have to like, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy all these things and I'm going to stockpile all this food so that I don't have to leave, so that I don't have to see people and breathe in the air and then get sick. And I have to almost hourly think to myself, okay, am I going to try and grasp at control that's impossible for me to get, or am I going to have to like really surrender this in prayer? Like, how am I going to work through the relinquishing of this perceived control? And that's really difficult. I don't know how.
It's kind of made me step back and say, okay, like what are the absolute essentials of my job? Like I literally went through my email inbox and was like, okay, what are the things that I can actually handle during this time, otherwise like it's getting archived, or like what's absolutely essential. And I kind of realized like, okay, nothing is really that essential in my job, which in some ways is like, oh, like is that good or bad? But also like, why do I stress about this stuff? Like, can I, after this is all over, think back like, okay, if I'm getting stressed about something, would this matter in a pandemic? No. So so much of like things that give me stress at work are like federal and state timelines that we have to meet, and like, okay, they can just change those if they want, and we're probably not going to meet them, and it's okay, like that's just going to happen. It kind of, but I think even on the bigger scheme outside of work responsibilities, stepping back and thinking like, what are the most essential things, like, and realizing that it is those relationships with people, and so that's what hurts so much when it's limited.
the focus that my company has asked all of the staff is to focus on the relationships and focus on the people and meet needs, and even if that means changing our model for a period of time. And it is a reminder that relationships are key, and that the mechanics of surviving the situation, it's really going to be relationships that can make the difference and help people mitigate the stress and anxiety and the uncertainty and the fear that they're experiencing, just knowing that they're not alone, that there are people out there to partner, and it's not about manufacturing the next widget or selling the next thing or finishing the next campaign, but that relationships are key, and that's become more and more evident as this pandemic continues, that these relationships are going to be key. Even it's funny because we thought we were distant from each other via social media and the internet 2 weeks ago, but now we're really distant from people, and all we have is social media and internet and email. Perspective has changed drastically, but relationships keep bubbling to the top. And you saying that reminds me, maybe that's going to be the new norm, and that's good.
Something that, as you guys were talking, it made me think about this. I feel like what's ringing through in what everybody's saying is that, okay, of course we would never wish to have a global pandemic like eke its way through our existence, but I feel like there are definitely clear ways that God is using this to bring about like transformation and change and use it for his good. Like on Sunday, we even sang the song, like, you take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. And I would love to just even dwell on that idea. Like, what kinds of things have you guys seen, whether it's in your life, whether it's just that you've seen on social media, through the grapevine, like, what kind of good do you see is happening in our community and in our country and even in your personal life? Like, what good is God doing right now?
I would say, and I think it goes back to what, as you were talking, Brian, it's like something about this reveals like people's true value. Like when there's not this disease ripping through different countries and killing people, and potentially when you see these calculations of like, well, it could kill millions, like I think a lot of us see ourselves as indestructible, immortal. Like I think of myself and life is about me, and I don't think of other people as like they are important, they have value. I think about, well, what I think is important, and I have value, and what I want goes. And this whole thing has revealed like people realizing like, oh, I'm not indestructible, I'm not immortal, and neither is anyone else, and we have to care about this. I want people to care about my life. I don't want to get sick. I don't want them to get sick. It's like this weird, people have stepped out of only viewing themselves and their lives as important and looking and turning outwardly towards like, no, the community in general, they actually do matter more than my upselling my product to this person. That client isn't a client. They're a person whose family is affected and who potentially like their entire life could be changed. And we've started to, for whatever reason, like see them as having the value that they actually have. And I've seen it you see it just all over the place, that it's like, oh, people start realizing like everyone has value, and I'm going to sacrifice some of my personal, like, however I would want the situation to go for the greater good of those people that have value.
But isn't it ironic that the command to distance ourselves socially from one another has actually built and strengthened relationships? Like, I see people on social media that are exchanging phone numbers with neighbors for the first time.
Yeah.
Right? When you can't hang out on the porch, now we're meeting our neighbors and offering to serve them in a real way, in a way that may not, the avenue to do that may not even existed 3 weeks ago. But now, via a policy of isolation, we're meeting neighbors and swapping phone numbers and serving one another the way that we arguably should have been doing all along, and many of us hadn't.
Yeah, and I think, this with this illusion of control that's just been kind of dropped away and faded away, we see everything that we did take for granted, right? When we were walking around in the daylight and buying things and doing all that. I saw this image on social media. Okay, fine, I was the one that posted it, but I'm just saying I saw this image on social media where there was this aisle of a huge stocked aisle of toilet paper, like just all the shelves were full, and I said,
I saw that.
Thank you. I said, this is 2020's version of a land flowing with milk and honey, because that's like kind of where we're at now. But we took that for granted, and we've taken all of these things in our life for granted. So like, what is the good that can come out of this? Maybe we can step back and say like, wow, like we had so much to be thankful for.
Yeah.
Like in our everyday lives, like we could just get in our car and go to the store and buy a few squares of toilet paper if we wanted. You know, we could have a big party and not have to worry about getting a deadly disease. You know, we could do all of these. We could go to work and not have to worry about staying 6 feet away from everyone. And, you know, so all of these things that now have become so precious are now torn away from us. And maybe that is a time for us to turn kind of inwardly and say, like, let's be thankful. Let's actually take the commands of Scripture seriously when it says, you know, be thankful about everything, and everything give thanks, right? And maybe this is a hard way to learn a little bit of that lesson.
Just as a young woman and as a young mom, I feel like it's very easy for me to get caught up in just the daily grind, my constant to-do list, and this constant feeling as a young mom of guilt that I'm like trying to get my chores done. I'm trying to get my work done at home and not be on my computer too much or not be on my phone too much, but then also play with my kids. And I had even confided in our community group the other day. I feel constantly pulled in a million directions, and I never know. I feel like I can't achieve a balance. And it was so cool, like over this past week, that those options for me to go out and get errands done or me to go to work while the kids are at daycare and preschool, I'm now here stuck with my kids, and it's been such a huge blessing. Like I asked my group to pray that I would be able to prioritize my kids with my time so that I could play with them and build into my relationship with them. And lo and behold, I mean, it's sort of an extreme answer to prayer, but over the past few days, it's been cool that like since my other options have been taken away, I have sort of what you said, experienced the realization that what's important is right here. And I don't know, I've had such peace of mind. Like I have so much trouble prioritizing being in the Bible every single day. And now I have so much time that I can. And it's like God is handing me this opportunity to really like invest time in my family, invest time in my relationship with Him, and remind me that, no, this is what's going to sustain you. This is what's important. This is what I value. So I don't know. I know that there's been a lot of other things outside of our home, but I feel like even for me spiritually, having been praying that I would have the opportunity to just work against that guilt that I constantly feel, I feel like this has been a huge answer to that prayer.
And something else where I feel like I've had a similar like answer to prayer. I'm a very social person. I've realized even more so through this what an extrovert I am. Like I've always known that I am, but the idea of not being around people like has honestly kind of scared me in some ways. I think because I live by myself, and so I always like that doesn't bother me normally because I know I have like these great friends, community. I'm super involved in like a ton of activities outside of work, so I'm always around people. But then all of a sudden that's like stripped away, and I'm thinking of just myself being by myself in my house, and it's like terrifying to me. But so kind of because I know this tendency of myself to just always be on the go and not really like just resting. And so it's kind of interesting to see, not only am I at times having to just be at home and not be out like involved in activities and doing all these things, but just being content with it truly being sometimes just me and Jesus. And like I've had to ask myself the question, if it is just me and Jesus, am I okay with that? And definitely like coming to grips with, okay, yeah, yes, I am. But it's not my first inclination.
Yeah. Brian or Matt, I know that you guys, Matt, you're getting the opportunity right now to work a little bit more from home. And Brian, you said you were working from home today. Is that weird? Is it hard?
It is weird. Like, it is weird. Our office has allowed us to work from home a day or two a week since I've been there last 15 months, and that's been a nice perk. But when they sent the email yesterday and said we're closing all of our offices, everybody just stay home and work, I thought, because the office was a place. I'm an extrovert, so having that just taken away has been hard. And I actually even joked with some of my team members. I was like, "Can we just launch a screen share and I'll just work and we can just glance at the monitor and see each other there? Would that be weird?" And we all agreed no. That would be nice just to see other faces on the monitor. I haven't done it, but I know it's available. I need to see people so bad that like today I made it till 11:30. My teenager's still in bed in his room in the basement. I ordered Starbucks like I normally do most mornings on my app, and I went to pick it up just to see the baristas because I know them all. And thankfully, I mean, Nick, Grace, and Peggy were all there when I got there, and it was so good to see them and just talk to them about their day because, like, it just felt like my community was just missing. And I even did go get a stupid latte at Starbucks. Was key to my day, and I was like, guys, I'll be back Thursday. I'm going to try to stay away tomorrow, but I'll see you Thursday. And they're like, oh, so glad you're here, and to see my people. But I was just checking on coworkers today that I normally would sit next to that are at home. It's not preferred. It's a challenge.
I can't relate to any of these extrovert things you guys are saying.
Yeah,
I'm so happy.
It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a challenge a lot more of a challenge to work at home than I thought. Mm-hmm. First of all, like if I were maybe a bachelor right now, like I think I would love this time in many ways because I could. I mean, that's a little overstating it, but like
you could rock it out.
I'm an introvert. I could just find some good books I wanted to knock out. Get my work done in an efficient manner. But going home with 3 kids under 5 and my wife, who all of a sudden has all these projects she wants to do during the apocalypse. She's an Enneagram 1, so she really has already a list. That's been a challenge because, like, what takes priority, right? Because you do have some work to do. You need to get that done. But then there's kids running around. I mean, always asking to play and then just taking care of kids. And then my wife, who's great, wouldn't want anybody else. But she does have some assignments for me as well, along with my boss at my real job. So it's been a challenge, but it's an adjustment period. And I do find myself missing going to work. And so I've been able to even identify, because my wife works part-time and she also watches our children. Like, and Grace, I know you can identify with this too, but like, it's really tough to carve out time if you're actually at home to get any real work done. And so I think it's made me empathize with that a little more. And kind of see things from her perspective a little bit, and so yeah, it's been a big challenge.
One final question I asked you guys to think through. Okay, so what is one thing you would say to our audience? You have the platform, you have the pulpit, if you will, for a moment. What would you say is just maybe an encouragement or just an insight that you have had that's something personal that you've been like, man, I've been holding on to this, or I've seen this be helpful or whatever? Because there is, I think the central theme of all this is like, man, everything is very uncertain and everything's just a little uncomfortable right now. How do we help people? How do we try to give some sort of like encouragement to people who are looking for some certainty right now or some hope?
I think the encouragement through all of this is that we can see that once we're faced with a crisis, that things that we've looked to save us, government or political parties or celebrities or money or wealth or what we've stored up in our homes, is shallow. Mm-hmm. And the things that do matter as a faith that's bigger than our circumstance and the relationships that we have. And tonight around this table, we've talked about relationship a lot, which is just that's the cream that's sort of risen to the top of this in the last few weeks. And that my hope and prayer through this is that people will realize that our hope in the organization of government or political party or money or possessions means nothing, and that a sustainable hope is something bigger than those things. And for anybody, no matter where their faith is now, that realization will come to the surface for everyone. We're only in week 2 or 3 in America of what's going to be a 10-week or more ordeal. Those relationships are going to be important, and the realization that we're all in this, that the guy in the really big house is stuck there, just like the guy in the really small house, and that he's counting on his neighbors just like I am. And for once, this crisis has sort of put us on the same level field, except some people apparently have way more toilet paper and grits than other people. But we're all looking for our neighbors and counting on our neighbors and our friends and relationships, and realizing that our hope is not secure if it's in these institutions and people and things here in the present.
I think from my perspective, the word of encouragement that I would give is that you have still your breath, and you still have today. And, we are promised one breath at a time, one day at a time. And I think it's in James where James talks about, like, don't say you're going to go to this city for a year and then do this and that and the other thing. It says, no, take stock of the day that you have. I mean, you are here now, and you have this breath now, so what can you do now with that? How can you encourage someone now with what you have? How can you use this opportunity to share the gospel now with what you have? Reach out to your neighbors now with what you have. And this gives us a lot of unique opportunities, even Allie, like what you were sharing, to do that, that we may have not had before. And so that's been a big challenge to me, and I hope that my kid, one more side note, my kids watch Frozen a lot, and so they've been watching Frozen 2. And so in that movie, Anna finds out that she thinks her sister, Elsa, and Olaf have died in the movie. And so then she sings this song, which is called The Next Right Thing. And I know it's a little bit maybe not appropriate for this, but basically the idea of this song is, did you want to give a sample, Grace?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I was just going to say, I feel like that song is also my mantra lately. If I'm upset or if I am like feeling nervous about something, I just go, okay, Grace, do the next right thing.
So we have today.
What's the next right thing?
What can we do today? What's the next right step that we can take? Because we do have this day.
Kind of a practical advice that I would say to people, and I feel like most people have probably recognized this by now, but like, just because we have the ability to have minute by minute updates in the news doesn't mean that's healthy for us, and doesn't mean that's something that we should consume. I feel like I can see a direct correlation between my anxiety level and how much I'm reading the news. And it's okay. I think it's okay to check in and know what's going on. But if you find yourself getting really anxious, it's probably good to just like step away and go outside, get some fresh air, go for a walk. Talk to somebody on the phone. I don't know. Talk to Jesus. That'd be a good one. There, have been like so many rumors floating around, like, oh my gosh, there's going to be a mandatory quarantine for 2 weeks. Like, stock up. You're going to be on lockdown. And I kind of was like frozen in fear in that, just mainly thinking about living by myself. And I was like, okay, well, if that happened, I think I would like drive 3 hours east to stay with my parents, just so I would like, be safe. They've got plenty of food. My dad's got a ton of guns. We'd be good. But so that was like my initial like fear response. But then as I kind of stepped back and thought about it, I was like, man, but then I'd really be missing like a lot of opportunities to serve my community of Dayton in this time where I know that there's going to be opportunity. And so I think just as much as possible, remember that, okay, this isn't forever. Right now it seems like it's never going to change and it's only going to get worse, and this is how things are going to be forever. But like looking at other countries and cultures, things have gone back to normal. And so to really take advantage feels like a weird term to use, but really, I guess capitalize on this time when people are more willing to talk about spiritual things or willing to receive help in a way they might not otherwise be, and just look for ways to love and serve your neighbor. I just personally want to be able to like look back on coronavirus and feel like, man, that was a time when I was really able to serve the Lord in some crazy ways, instead of, man, I like went and like hunkered down in my parents' house and watched movies and was just scared the whole time. Like, I don't want that to be how I remember this time.
Yeah.
I can think through that. This verse, like Jesus says, what would it profit a man to gain the world but forfeit his soul? And I sort of been thinking about that verse in a different way of like, what good would it be if we went through this season of like, you survived the coronavirus and yet you learn nothing from it. Like you don't actually evaluate like where your trust and your security comes from. You don't really use it to learn how to be more grateful for what you have. Like what good would it be to just say, cool, I survived. Like that's not what I want to, that's not how I want to remember this. And that's what you're saying as well, Allie. It's like, you don't want to just be like, cool, we got through it on the other side. It's like, man, what good would that be? This is an opportunity for us to learn and to grow and to press into faith and to trust God that he's got something that he's doing on his earth, not like, oh, why'd you mess up my earth and what I had going on here?
Yeah, I think even along those same lines, Chris Williams, our head pastor, always talks about how there's a very real enemy that is working against us and trying to use this virus and I mean many other things, but particularly this virus right now to really steal our joy and our peace and kill our relationships and just destroy our lives in general. And I think when we can shift our focus to that and shift it to focusing on like, hold on, the Lord has told us that he has good plans for us and that he uses all things to work together for our good. I know that sounds a little cliche, but if we really believe that, then sort of like what you said, Allie, I want to not be paralyzed by fear, but be willing to be mobilized to show people the love of Jesus at this time. Like there are a lot of scared people out there. And if I'm not willing to share that hope and the fact that like, if something bad does happen to me, I have complete confidence about where I'm going. And I feel like the opportunity that we have to share that with people who are scared about that same thing, if we pass up on that because of our fear, I feel like we're not serving Jesus the best way that we could.
Make no mistake, the world is watching the church right now.
Yeah.
They're paying attention who's feeding the kids at the schools. They're paying attention who's delivering meals to the parks. They're paying attention to who takes care of their neighbors. And we should not be blinded to the fact that the world is watching the church's response.
Yeah.
And not that we should perform for the world. That's not what we exist. We serve to glorify our perfect God. But I think this is an opportunity for the church to demonstrate what we're called to do. And it's an opportunity not to be passed, like Allie said, to shelter and safety. This is the opportunity to put our faith in action and not be afraid and be willing to do those things that are oftentimes difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I like what you said, Grace. I think it's Paul who says like making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. And even what you said, like Satan trying to use whatever he can in order to throw a wrench in our effectiveness and as servants of Christ. And this is a great tool to throw a wrench in our effectiveness, this virus.
Yeah.
But because the days are evil, like Paul uses that as an opportunity. He's like, make the most of that opportunity and whatever that might look like. And it's going to look different.
Yeah, if you're stuck at home, use this time to, as much as you possibly can, disciple your children. I mean, when else I haven't had this amount of time with my kids in a really long time, and now I have the opportunity to spiritually build into them in a way that I haven't in a while. Or, like you said, earlier, Brian, like people are finally getting their neighbors' numbers for the first time in the 15 years of living in their homes. Like, use this chance to really do God's work that we should have already been doing. I feel like this is just a chance for us to sort of do over.
Yeah. I mean, Paul encourages the church in one of his many letters, but it's like, and make the most of every opportunity. And he's talking about in spreading the gospel, like sharing your faith, in investing in people, like, and this is an opportunity. You can see this as like an inconvenience, or you can see this as an opportunity.
I know that this is a weird thing to say, but I truly am thankful that God is using this to mobilize his church. And I feel like because of our lack of control and because of just how scary it is, I mean, it really just is forcing us to rely solely on his power. Thanks for tuning in to the Fearless Church podcast. You can always stay connected with us and everything we're up to on Facebook, on our Instagram at Fearless Church Ohio, or on our website at www.befearless.org. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a sermon or episode here on the Fearless Church podcast.